All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Kuf, Maseches Psachim. As mentioned earlier, today might be a little short shear, not because of, we'll stop early, just because the short blot, a lot of Rashbam on the Sugyas, Tazos. There's a lot of Sugyas people learn, when they come for Bein Hazmanim, they have the Chaburos and all that, so it's always, they're learning this stuff. So yesterday we touched upon a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi regarding starting a meal before Shabbos and Yantif versus before Pesach. So we know by Shabbos and Yantif they said Rabbi Yehuda said you have to stop. Rabbi Yosi said you can go up until the meal. So maybe that was the difference between that. That was one suggestion between that and our Mishnah. Perhaps that's the difference between Shabbos and Yantif versus Pesach. Even Rabbi Yosi would agree with that. With our Mishnah, it says you have to stop Samach L'Mincha. And the other pshat was that no. Maybe it was the machlokas was only about stopping, as we'll cover today. But one is the middle of a meal. Does he have to stop as Shabbos or Yontif is starting or not? And then we said, but then we also brought a case where we said the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda. So it sounds like they argue on a case of Shabbos and Yontif. Even in that case, in other words, he holds that they can go ahead and start. They can argue in both cases. Not only, and they also argue on Erev Pesach. They said no, that was talking about a case of Hafsaka. All right, so we actually left off almost like in the middle of Daf Kuf Amud Aleph. So Michlal Depligi B'Hafsaka. I think we got to Detanya. Am I correct? Detanya? Yeah. All right, fine. So middle of Kuf Amud Aleph, Detanya. They were learning a brayso. Mafsikin. You have to stop when for Shabbos. If Shabbos is beginning, right, we're going to actually touch upon, in Yonah Diyoma, we just had this, right? A lot of people said, oh, we're going to be, we're going to have our Purim Suda late, and we'll stop for Shabbos, and so Paris Mappa, right? We'll soon get into that. So Mafsikin the Shabbos. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. You have to stop. Rabbi Yosi Aimer ain't Mafsikin. You can go into Shabbos, continue your meal, right? It's not a degradation when it comes to Shabbos. There was a Ma'aser Rosh Gamliel who was with both participants of this machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. They're in Akko, the Kidei Shalei Mayom, and the day was Shabbos was going to start. Shabbos was coming. So Amar Lei Rav Shimon Gamliel Rabbi Yosi. So it says Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel to Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi. It says, Rabbi, should we go? Now remember, Rabbi Yosi says you can continue. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to stop. So he says, should we be concerned of the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, Chavereinu? Should we be concerned for Rabbi Yehuda's shita and stop? Right? Maybe we should be cheshish for his shita and stop, unlike you, who says we can continue. Samarlo, right? Lefanai, Devar Lefanai, Rabbi Yehuda. V'achshavata mechavev divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Says all other days, right? You go ahead and basically honor my words in front of Rabbi Yehuda, but now you're honoring, right, the words of Rabbi Yehuda in front of me. In other words, I understand you always hold like me, right? You always stick up for me, even when I'm not around. And just Rabbi Yehuda's around, you stick up for me. Let's hold like Rabbi Yosi. And now Rabbi Yehuda's here, right? And you're sticking up for Rabbi Yosi in front of me, right? Hagam lichvoish shesamalka imi bias, right? Right? Pasuk. So you would, from Esther, he says, well, you want to also, take my queen. In other words, I'm right here, and you're like, doing it right in front of me. Right, you're going against my psak halacha, right, to continuing it right in front of me. Samalei, he said, im kain lo nafsik. If that's the case, we're not going to go ahead and stop. We are going to go ahead and continue our meal. Why? Shema yira talmidim vikvu halacha l'daros. Because perhaps if people see us stop, they'll say, oh, this is the halacha. The halacha is you have to stop. The halacha is like a Yehuda, you have to stop the meal in the middle. And Amron, they said, they did not leave there until they established halacha like Rabbi Yosi. And Rabbi Yosi says, ein mafsikin, you don't have to stop. However, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, 4 lines in the bottom, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, ein halacha like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yosi. Halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. That says you can just continue with the meal. And now like Rabbi Yosi says, you have to stop it right away. Ella, Paris, Mappa, Mekadesh. Go ahead, you're in the middle of the meal, cover all the food. Then go ahead and make kiddush. Then kiddush hayom, right, with the food covered, and then you can continue. Go ahead with your meal. You have to make mekadesh, right? Make kiddush and then continue with the meal. So, Eini, is this the halacha? Just like we're mafsik lekiddush, you have to stop for kiddush. Turn the page. Kach mafsikin la'avdola. So too, you have to be mafsik for Avdullah. What does it mean to be mafsik? And I was there eating at the end of Shal Shudas, and all of a sudden time for Avdullah comes, you should stop the meal, right? My mafsik and la lakira shulchan does not mean to remove the table. So just like both, so the halacha doesn't seem to be just cover it up. The halacha means to be remove the table. It says lo. It says lamapa. Maybe it means to cover it. In other words, no, the halacha is that you cover the table. In other words, if the food is out there, we don't make you be matriach them to remove all the food. Rather, go ahead and cover the table, make havdalah, continue the meal, right? And by covering it, right, there's no requirement of benching. You just cover it. And Rabba bar Rav Huna, iklo lebei reish galusa. One time, Rabbi Rav Huna, he was in the house of the reish galusa. Oisu tacha kamei. They brought out the table of food early. They brought the table of food full of food, and so they had all the food there before. And normally one does not have the food before the kiddush. So what do? Paris mapa v'kidesh. So they covered the food, and then they were mekadesh, right? This is what we see one of the sources of covering, right, for the mun or whatever it is, or the food, that you cover the food and you make kiddush over the wine. And Tanya Mihachi, similarly learn, she'ein mavinas hashulchan elim kain kiddush. You only bring the food, right, with the food. You only bring the table with the food, elim kain kiddush, right? And only if you already make kiddush, then you go ahead and bring out the food. However, v'im heavy, but if they did go ahead and bring out the food on the table, because usually they have these smaller tables, they bring them out, paris mapa mekadesh. Then they go ahead and they cover the food, and they are mekadesh. And Tani chada shavin she'ein maschilin. So we have one brisa that says everyone agrees that you do not start a meal. The Tani, we have another brisa that says shavin shemaschilin, that everyone agrees, and everyone referring to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, everyone holds that they agree that you can start. So what are the two cases? So bishlama hadatanya shavin she'ein maschilin. I understand, according to the opinion who holds that everyone agrees that you can go ahead and start a meal mishchachas laber Pesach. That's referring to Erev Pesach because you want to go into to be l'teyavon in order for the purpose of matzah. Makes sense. But everyone agrees where they can go ahead and start a meal. So when do we see Rabbi Yehuda agrees you can start a meal? So Amos, when is that? If it's Erev Shabbos, we see Rabbi Yehuda does argue Rabbi Yossi. So like kasha, it's not a kasha. Kan kaidam tisha, kan liachar tisha. One is before the 9th hour, because we said mincha is at 9.5 hours a day, and then Savach mincha will be a half hour earlier. So if it's 3:30 and a half hour earlier, is 3 o'clock. And oisam b'nei adam. By the way, those people shekichu beis hakneses, they hear the kiddush in the beis hakneses. Amar Rav says Rav yidei yayin lo yatsu yidei kiddush yatsu. They have not fulfilled their obligation of brei pri hagafen, but however, kiddush they have fulfilled. Let's go see. Actually, let's do a couple. I know because we have some extra time. Let's just do a couple of rashbams on the bottom, right? The bottom two. So Yidei Kiddush Yatsu actually says in the Rashbam has in the opposite order. So you see Yidei Kiddush Yatsu, 12 lines from the bottom of the Rashbam, right, which is the in place of the Rashi over here. So Yidei Kiddush Yatsu. So Afa Pishalo Shatsu. So they fulfilled their according to Rav. We'll see Rav Machlos and Rav and Shmuel. According to Rav, they have fulfilled their obligation of Kiddush. Why? And Alpha Pishalosh, so even though they didn't go ahead and drink wine, right? That the person who's making kiddush, he has to go ahead and taste it. And even if only one person had the wine, everyone has to fill their obligation of kiddush. That would mean person makes kiddush, he has wine. Everyone at the table is yaitse the mitzvah of kiddush. They don't need to go ahead and taste. Like it says. At the end of Chol Marvin says, however, it's best everyone should go ahead and taste. And then if they heard it in shul and the person drank the wine in shul, then they no longer need to go ahead and make kiddush at home. Because Rav does not require kiddush b'makom suda, right? That you have to go ahead and make kiddush the place where you're eating the suda. And since he doesn't require that, since you're having your suda at home and not in shul, doesn't make a difference. You can be yaitse your kiddush according to Rav. Even though they didn't fulfill their obligation, they didn't eat. They're not eating in shul. Nevertheless, they're yaitse the mitzvah of kiddush. And however, says Rav also, when it comes to the bracha brei hagafen, they have not filled that. What does that mean? If they have wine in their house to go ahead and they want to go ahead and drink wine, right? They have to go make another brei pri hagafen. They have not said, "Oh, I already heard brei pri hagafen shul. I can just drink wine at home without making a bracha." Right? Because they have fulfilled the brei pri hagafen from the bracha that was made in the shul. After they've left their place, the havile hesach hadas, because this is the hesach hadas. This is considered an interruption. And therefore, since it's an interruption, right, you have to make another bracha. But let's say one makes kiddush in his house on Shabbos, right? He doesn't have to go ahead and make another bracha of brei pri hagafen in the middle of his meal. Right? Rather, he is already pattered by making the brei pri hagafen in the beginning of the suda to have wine later suda. Because the time we learn in kids mevarchen brei al yain shlifnei hamazon paters the yain shalach hamazon. Right? You make a bracha on the wine from before the food, paters the wine from after the food. Fine. And over there, and over there, that was talking about a case of Shabbos and Yontif where he's kaveh suda al yain. Fine. So that was the sheet of Rav. So Rav holds you got to make. It says kiddush really. You fulfill your obligation because you don't need kiddush b'makom suda, but wine you got to go back and make a brei pri hagafen. Shmuel Amar back in the Gemara. Last words. Shmuel Amar af. Yedei kiddush lo yatsa. Even kiddush is not fulfilled, right? Because why? Because Rav holds that you need kiddush makom suda, and since you didn't have your suda in the shul, therefore that which you heard the kiddush in the shul, right? You're not eating there, so therefore you have to go back and make another kiddush even for yourself. So El Rav Lamalei the kedusha b'beisei. According to Rav, so if you ready to fulfill his obligation of kiddush by hearing it, the guy making the shul, why did he go home to make kiddush? In order to go ahead and be yaitse the people who didn't go to shul, people in his house. And according to Shmuel, why did you make kiddush in the first place in shul? Right? You have to make another brei pri hagafen. You have to make kiddush again. So what's the point of doing the shul? So he says no. Our answer is no. To go ahead and fill the orchim, the guests who are there who don't have a place to eat. They're chava diachlu v'shasu v'gana bei kanisha. Because over there, they go ahead and they stay in shul. V'yaz the shmuel atame and shmuel goes to shitaso. The Yamar Shmuel Ein Kiddush Elav Makom Suda, that Shmuel holds that Ein Kiddush Elav Makom Suda, and therefore those people, since they're eating in shul, therefore they make the kiddush over there for them. But if no one was eating in shul, then according to Shmuel, then the kiddush in shul would be pointless. All right, we'll stop here. Shkoyach, everybody. Like I said, right, you take the good with the bad or the long with the short, and today is a shorter one, and a lot of our Pesachim is short. But I guess we'll take these days like the same days we take the longer blots. So shkoyach.
Shkoyach. Have a great